Hey everyone, I'm teen writer Noah Barfield, author of that incredible, amazing action fantasy novel Legendland, which is on Amazon now, and I'll be providing a link for it in the description below. Or you can just click here. Either one works, so take your pick and check out my novel. But you didn't come here for my wonderful singing voice. No, you came here for writing tips, and I have a special topic for you this week. Well, I mean, every topic is special in Writer's Corner. So this week I have been inspired by children, and don't look at me like that. It's not as creepy as I'm making it out to be. I'm not gonna cook them into pies or anything, just into cakes. I'm kidding. You don't cook cakes, you bake them. Anyway, I've been inspired by writing about children this week and having them as main or incredibly supportive, like focused characters. I've been inspired by this from reading the novels Oliver Twist as well as The Little Prince. Additionally, I'm a young author. I have other young authors who are watching my videos. And I thought, hey, maybe I should make a video about young people. Seems like a good idea considering my age and the age of my audience. So, there are a few things you have to keep in mind whenever writing about younger people and children that I'm going to discuss in this video, and then a few tips on how you go about doing that exactly. So, first off, you have to keep in mind the child's age. Duh. Aside from sex, age is probably the most important factor you have in determining any character. I would argue that it is probably tied with sex in determining any character, whether it's a child or not. Also, it's incredibly important to determine the child's age and the age that they're going to end up as, beginning and end, as long as while they're a child, you're doing that, because there's a lot of growth that happens in adolescent years. There's just a lot of constant change, adaptation, evolution, all that stuff that happens for kids. And a child at 9 is much different than a child at 12. So I'm going to be discussing about that age range, preteen years, 9 to 12, because any younger than that starts to get really difficult for me to talk about, because it gets difficult for me to write, honestly. So 9 to 12 is about the age range that I'm going to do, because it's just still easy for me to write that age. So first thing, you have to keep in mind the child's age. Second, you have to keep in mind their physical appearance, body type, and how what their body is like. Because a child at the age of 9, as I said, much different from the age of 12. A 12-year-old can be much bigger than a child at 9. They can be stronger, faster, they can have more of a vocabulary, they can have all of these things that basically shows their experience and their superiority in a Lord of the Flies type situation over a youngin. So, keeping this in mind, you have to keep that in mind when you're writing them. Also, they're not going to be able to do physical tasks as well as older people are, simply because they're smaller. So they won't be able to run as fast, jump as high, won't be able to climb trees, won't lift heavy things, march through undergrowth. They'll be able to hide easier. They're smaller, so they can hide easier, and that's an advantage. But a lot of these more physically strenuous tasks, not so much, because even though they seem like they have more energy, they have to expend more of it to keep up. This also means that unless your child is aided by magic, some sort of mystical force, a super soldier serum drug thing, or a lot of extra, training, they're not going to be able to take on full-size opponents. They're not going to be able to cut opponents down with swords. They're not going to be able to take them on in hand-to-hand combat unless they have a lot of help from other more supernatural or scientific means, or unless they have guns. This is going to be very difficult for them to do, nigh impossible. Keeping that in mind, this is not an anime, this is a novel. So unless they're obliterating them with magic, or you have a child sniper, or maybe a super soldier samurai who happens to be 9 years old, sure, but regular children cannot take on a full-size adult. But the second thing you have to keep in mind is a child's verbal communication, their words, because they have lack of experiences over adults. They have less than adults do and older people, meaning they have less connections formed in their brain because that happens over time and the experiences that happen. So unless your child is an extra-dimensional being who has millions of years of experience or thousands of years and is just hiding in the guise of a child to fool us into a false sense of security, they're probably not going to have the same amount of experience as an adult. Even a child with a traumatic past sometimes locks those memories away to help them move on, or they don't really understand the full weight of them until later, which means that they're still not going to have those as defining moments until later, unless you're Bruce Wayne. So this being said, that since they have that plus a limited vocabulary due to their lack of world experiences and knowing words in general commonly, they're not going to be able to communicate as well, meaning their communication is going to be different. This results in why children have secret languages and code words and all these different things. I mean, unless you're an author, in which case you have all of these as well, but that's just for a made-up world of people that don't exist. We're not crazy. Anyway, with children, you have to keep in mind these things, and you have to keep in mind how they talk to other children. I would recommend going and watching them interact with other children, with other people, but that's a real good way to get put on a list, so be sparse with that watching technique, which is the backup for many writers. But keeping this in mind, you have to just think about whenever you were a child, how you spoke to other people, and the connections that you formed. And speaking of connections, that moves on to number 3, their thought processes. Their mental connections that they form are different. How their brains work and how they're going works differently. The same things that have a lot of impact on us might not affect them as much simply because they don't understand as much. They haven't experienced as much as we have. Well, as older people have. I still haven't experienced that much. But this being said, you have to make sure that if you're writing in first person, you have to be very careful if you're writing from a child's mind, because you have to tap into that thought process that children have, which is not easy. Third person is a little more different and a little easier because you can kind of do it from outside, and you can do that from how they act and how they talk, and you don't have to get right in there into how children think, which is really a mystery to many of us. So moving on from that, I think the last thing you have to keep in mind is a child's emotions. They're commonly much more turbulent than older people's are. They have much more, I like to use the word velocity, because they just seem so much faster than our emotions. You know, like you have people that are quick to anger, or quick to be happy, or quick to sadness, or quick to all these emotions. Children are like that, but on speed. They are so quick to all of these diverse range of emotions that they don't fully know the effects of yet. This does not make them emotionally stunted because they don't realize the different emotional impacts and effects of different things. Rather, it just means that they can't comprehend them, and they have this wide range of emotions that they feel. This does not mean that all of your child characters should be emotionally volatile. No, this just means that they have a wide range of emotions that they can't always control. We all feel this as writers whenever a character isn't doing what we say. It's kind of like that, but on a larger scale and a smaller body all the time. So keeping that in mind, let's move on to a few tips with writing children. First off, you have to keep all of this stuff that I've just mentioned in mind, as well as a lot of other variables, because children are crazy, and they're different, and they seem like a different species. They kind of are, because they change so much they're nearly unrecognizable. I mean, we don't really still crawl around and make, little baby noises. We're completely different from that. We change so much. So you have to keep in mind all these different things that I've talked about. Now, a few tips on writing this is, if you're younger, this is obviously going to be easier because you're closer to the age range that you're writing. If you're older, try and be around kids more. Try and get around, maybe your kids more, your brother, your family's kids, one of your friends' kids, babysit, do something like that, to where you can get around kids and you can observe them without being put on a list or dubbed as creepy, because that can happen, and it's incredibly helpful to observe how children act, especially because they're so much more open. That's another thing. Children are open. They don't have a lot of secrets, and whenever they do, they're kind of bad at keeping them. They're bad at lying most of the time. So children are open. Keep that in mind whenever you're writing. A great writing tip for children is, imagine if you couldn't tell a lie, and if you did, that you would say random weird words about it. This is a great tip for writing children because they commonly don't even realize whenever they're lying until they're taught it. Another thing, these children, your babies in your story, have to be taught things. They're not going to automatically learn. And if you don't have a tutor for them, what they see, their eyes, is going to be their tutor. And this is that fun thing that I talked about earlier. You can specifically imprint and psychologically manipulate your younger characters into being what you want at a later date from the experiences and interactions they have. If they are parentless, then they're going to learn from something else. If you introduce a role model that is more savage, such as a wild animal that is not going to care as much for the child, but is still going to raise them, this is going to imprint upon them and affect their entire behaviors. The small things that they see that might not affect them right away can slowly build up over time, and this is a great way to build up suspense over a character's development. How are they going to turn out? Well, you have to add up the little pieces over time that has just come in here and there. Maybe they saw a mugging whenever they were little, and then maybe something else happened. Maybe they saw a robbery. Maybe they've had to live on their own. Maybe they had to steal to survive and they didn't get caught, and then they start associating that with the robbery and the mugging and not having anyone to look out for themselves and this natural born independence, and things just start spiraling from there. There are a lot of things to keep in mind with children, but the compound effect, that butterfly effect of just rippling waves of small things affects other small things, which affect slightly larger things, which affect really big life-changing things. That's great to keep in mind with children because it works over a span of years and you almost don't see it coming. So I hope this has been helpful and that we finally have a video about writing young people and children for the young people. So I hope this has been helpful, and if you have any questions, comments, concern, or queries, that is wonderful, and you can feel free to contact me at my website, www.arc-storm.com. Leave a comment below. Check out any of my social media links. You can contact me at any of those, and just, I hope this has been helpful. Check back for more. Don't forget to tell everyone you know to subscribe, and go ahead and do that to yourself. And just thank you for watching. Continue to enjoy.